The winter wind tore through the canyon that morning, carrying with it a silence too heavy for the land. Samuel Hart, a rancher who had lived most of his life in solitude, was riding back from checking his cattle when his horse suddenly reared, uneasy at something ahead. Through the veil of drifting snowflakes, Samuel's eyes narrowed. There, swaying from a crooked mesquite tree, was the fragile form of a girl. She was no older than 16, her long black hair caught in the wind, her hands bound, her skin bruised, and a rough wooden sign hung around her neck with a message carved deep and cruel. "White man, don't forgive." For a moment, Samuel felt his breath seize in his chest, the stark cruelty of it striking him harder than the cold. He dismounted, his boots crunching into the frozen ground, and moved toward her. The girl's eyes fluttered open just enough to meet his, dark eyes filled with pain, but also something else, something unbroken. Before I continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the healing power of compassion, please take a moment to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to The Gentle Truth. Your support helps us keep telling stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Samuel's heart pounded as he reached up, his strong hands working quickly to cut the rope from her wrists, then from her neck. She collapsed into his arms, her body light as though the world had already stripped her of everything but spirit. He carried her gently to his horse, wrapping his own coat around her trembling frame. The rancher had known loss, his wife buried years ago, his home echoing with emptiness. But nothing had prepared him for the sight of such raw cruelty inflicted on someone so young. He rode hard through the snow, the girl pressed against him, whispering faintly in a tongue he could not understand. By the time he reached his ranch house, her lips were pale, her breath shallow, and Samuel feared he might lose her before the fire could warm her bones. That night was long. Samuel fed the fire with every log he had split, kneeling beside her, coaxing her to swallow small sips of broth. She woke in fevered dreams, sometimes calling out words in Apache, sometimes clutching his hand with desperate strength. Samuel was a man not used to prayer, but he found himself whispering to the silence, begging for her life. As dawn broke, her breathing steadied, and the flush of fever began to fade. When her eyes opened fully for the first time, they darted around the unfamiliar room before settling on his face with a mixture of fear and defiance. The days that followed were a test for them both. Samuel gave her space, speaking little, offering food, warmth, and quiet reassurance. She remained wary, retreating into silence whenever he entered the room. He discovered her name one evening when she sat by the fire, softly singing to herself, repeating a word that lingered in the melody. Naili. He learned it meant "I love you" or "you are loved" in her people's tongue, though he wondered if the word was meant as memory, not for him. Slowly, Naili began to heal. Her wounds closed, her strength returned, and with it came a fierce spirit. She began walking the ranch yard, tracing her fingers over the rough wood of the corral, watching the cattle with cautious curiosity. Samuel noticed the way she always scanned the horizon, as though expecting shadows from her past to appear at any moment. Yet despite the scars that marked her skin and heart, Naili carried within her a fire Samuel could not ignore. One afternoon, he found her kneeling beside a sick calf, stroking its neck with a tenderness that mirrored his own grief-softened soul. It was then Samuel realized that though the world had tried to break her, she was still capable of giving care, of offering love, even in silence. Their bond was forged not with words, but with small acts of trust, him leaving bread by her bedside, her gathering wildflowers and placing them in a jar on the kitchen table, both of them stealing quiet glances across the table as the days turned into weeks. But peace was fragile. One evening, while Samuel was mending a fence, riders appeared on the ridge, men from town who had heard whispers of an Apache girl hidden at his ranch. Their faces were twisted with the same hatred that had left her hanging from that tree. They shouted threats, demanding Samuel hand her over. In that moment, Samuel felt a choice weighing heavier than any he had ever made. He could stay silent, keep to his loner's ways, or he could step forward and claim her as his own responsibility. His voice, firm and unyielding, rang out over the wind. "She stays here, under my protection." The men hesitated, perhaps stunned by his defiance, and though they eventually turned back, Samuel knew the danger was far from over. That night, Nayeli sat by the fire, her eyes fixed on him with a depth he could not name. For the first time, she reached across the space between them, placing her small hand over his weathered one. It was an unspoken vow, a recognition that though they came from different worlds marked by pain, they had found something worth holding on to in each other. Samuel, who had lived for so long with silence as his only companion, felt something shift inside him. The ranch was no longer just wood and earth. It was becoming a home again, filled with the fragile beginnings of hope. Seasons passed. The girl once left for dead now laughed softly as she worked in the garden, her dark hair gleaming in the sun, her eyes carrying both the memory of sorrow and the courage of survival. Samuel found himself standing taller, the weight of loneliness lifting with every step she took beside him. He had saved her from the tree, but in truth it was she who saved him from the emptiness that had nearly consumed his life. Their story was not simple, nor free of challenges, but it was proof that even in the harshest land, even in the aftermath of cruelty, compassion could take root and grow strong. If this story has touched your heart, please like this video, share it with others who may need hope, and subscribe to The Gentle Truth so we can keep telling stories of love, courage, and redemption. And before you go, leave a comment below. What would you have done if you were Samuel, riding up to that tree on that winter day?